Hello, and thanks for joining me on the French Riviera. Arguably, the most famous film star in the world is back in Cannes, 30 years after his last visit. Tom Cruise brings with him the blockbuster Top Gun: Maverick. It's the sequel to his 1986 film that propelled him to global fame as a hotshot pilot.
Cruising into the Cannes Film Festival 36 years after his breakthrough role, the star, who needs no introduction, is back with a second installment of Top Gun. For his fans, it's been worth the wait.
You know, I made it for them. I make all my films for them. And they've been asking for this film for decades. So I want them to enjoy it and just have a great time at the movies.
Tom, we love you. Oh, j'adore.
Oh yeah, I love it. I'm really a fan of the film. It's my favorite Tom Cruise film.
The speed in the planes, it's quite exhilarating.
We watched it on repeat as we had a son who was obsessed with it. He became a pilot in the Air Force because of the film.
The fast-paced, all-action sequel sees Cruise return as hotshot pilot Maverick, now an instructor for the Navy's elite Top Gun weapons school. And while it features its share of throwbacks and nostalgic moments, the movie largely centers around a group of young, aspiring pilots. It's crammed with spectacular flight sequences, shunning CGI effects for the realism of cutting-edge IMAX photography. And as always, Tom Cruise performs his own stunts, all captured by 6 cameras placed inside the cockpit.
It is aggressive. You can't act that. The distortion in the face.
To help launch the film's festival showcase, 8 French Air Force pilots executed a flyby, a fitting tribute to the film's dizzying acrobatics.
Tom Cruise's 40-year career includes the Mission Impossible franchise, Jerry Maguire, and Rain Man. He starred in a number of classics, including A Few Good Men, directed by Rob Reiner. The filmmaker also has an incredible number of cult films to his name, including When Harry Met Sally and Stand By Me. He's here in Cannes this year as his very first movie, This Is Spinal Tap, is being screened here on the beach. Rob Reiner, hello.
How are you?
I'm well, how are you doing?
Good, very good.
You're here in Cannes with This Is Spinal Tap.
Yes.
It first came out in 1984.
That's correct.
It was your very first film. It was one of the very first, I think it was the first mockumentaries.
Well, it was the first rock and roll mockumentary. My friend Albert Brooks made a movie called Real Life that was a satire of a real family, but ours was the second.
In the beginning, no one got it, did they?
No. When we first previewed the film was in Dallas, Texas, and people came up to me and they said, I don't understand what this is. Why would you make a movie about a band that nobody's ever heard of, and one that's so bad? Why wouldn't you make a movie about the Beatles or the Rolling Stones? And I said, no, it's a satire that, they didn't get it. It took a long time for people to catch up to it, and they finally got it, and now it's in the National Film Registry.
Hello, stage.
I think we're lost.
The little jog there, about 30 feet, jog to the left.
Get ready. Get set.
Direct from hell, Spinal Tap.
Did you despair at first?
Well, yeah. I mean, you think you're making something you think is funny, and people don't get it, but then eventually they catch on to it. When we were making the film, the guy who shot it, a guy named Peter Smokler, he was a great DP, and the reason we picked him was because he had shot all these rock and roll documentaries. He was familiar with it. And the whole time we're making the film, he kept saying to me, I don't get it. What's funny about this? This is exactly what they do. Why would you what are you doing? I said, no, it's a little tilted. It is tilted.
You went on to have one of the longest and most golden runs in history. Your first 7 films are all classic. Spinal Tap, Sure Thing, and Stand By Me. And that film means a lot to you, doesn't it?
Yes, Stand By Me was probably was then and is now the most important film for me, because it was the first time I made a film that really reflected my sensibility and my personality. It had a combination of kind of melancholy, nostalgia, drama, and it had a lot of humor to it. There was music that I grew up with, and I thought if anybody accepts this movie, then I'll be okay. And when it became successful, I thought, okay, now I can do the kinds of things I want to do, because I like blending humor and drama together.
And you certainly did do the things you wanted to do. Then came Princess Bride. The book was successful, but a lot of directors had already tried to make it and hadn't been able to get it off the ground, including François Truffaut and Robert Redford. How did you do it?
When you're young and you're dumb and you don't know any better, I had read the book when I was in my 20s, early 20s, and I loved it. And I thought, wow, this is like somebody wrote something for me. I mean, because it struck my sensibility perfectly, because it did have humor and romance and adventure. It had all these things mixed. And so I called up William Goldman and he said, well, what have you done? He had seen Spinal Tap, so he knew that. And I was just working on the Sure Thing, and I sent him a rough cut of it, and he agreed to have a meeting with me. So I went, wow. So I go to William Goldman's house in New York City, and he opens the door, and the first words out of his mouth were, "This is my favorite thing I've ever written. I want this on my tombstone." And basically, what are you going to do with it? And then I went and talked with him, and I told him the things I wanted to do, and he eventually agreed to let me do it.
The next movie was the all-time classic, When Harry Met Sally, and the fake orgasm scene has been voted one of the funniest of all time.
Oh! 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 Oh, God. Oh.
I'll have what she's having.
And it was your mum who says...
It is my mother. It is my mother who has that line, and
I'll have what she's having.
I'll have what she's having, and it was a line written by Billy Crystal. And when my mother came to do it, I said, I think we have a funny scene here, Mom, and I think it's going to be okay, but, you have the last line, and if it isn't the topper, if it doesn't top the scene and get the big laugh, I may have to cut it. And she said, that's okay, I don't mind. I'm just hanging out with my son. I'm at the deli, I'll eat something. And it became one of the all-time most quoted lines in movie history. And so you see these lists of these great lines like, frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn, Clark Gable, or Louis, this could be the beginning of a beautiful friendship, Bogart. And I'm thinking there's Clark Gable, there's Humphrey Bogart, and then there's Estelle Reiner in with those groups, and it gives me a tremendous kick.
A faceless guy rips off your clothes, and that's the sex fantasy you've been having since you were 12. Exactly the same.
Well, sometimes I varied it a little.
Which part?
What I'm wearing.
But it's not just that line. You've got 3 scenes you've directed that I think will be on that list, including These Go to 11.
Yes, This Goes to 11,
This Goes to 11 in Spinal Tap, and You Can't Handle the Truth.
You Can't Handle the Truth. Well, that's Aaron Sorkin, and that's from his play. And yeah, that you hear that all the time. I went to dinner once with Nora Ephron, who wrote When Harry Met Sally, and her husband, Nick Pileggi. We go to this restaurant. She said, this is a place where John Gotti, the mobster, comes every Thursday. We'll go there. I said, okay. We go to this place, 8 o'clock, sure enough, there's John Gotti. He walks in, and he's got 6 wise guys around him. I look over, he notices me, but I don't want to look over there. Now I walk out of the restaurant. There's a big limo there, and a guy that looks like Luca Brasi from The Godfather, standing in front of the limo, and he looks at me and he goes, "You killed my father. Prepare to die." Like this, and I thought, oh my God. He says, I love that movie, The Princess Bride. I thought he was going to kill me.
So many other films as well. After When Harry Met Sally, you tackled not another rom-com, but Stephen King's Misery.
Right.
You spoke to some massive actors for that role before you gave it to James Caan, didn't you?
Yes. Well, I got turned down, to be honest with you. I got turned down by Robert Redford and Warren Beatty and Richard Dreyfuss and Kevin Kline. Everybody turned it down. But I thought Jimmy Caan, you know, if he could do it, the idea of this guy who is so physical and moves so, to be stuck in a bed for the whole movie, I thought if he could pull that off, it would be incredible, because it would be the frustration of him. And every day I came to the set and I'd say to him, Jimmy, in this scene, you're in bed. I tell him every day. He kept leaning in thinking I'm going to tell him something.
The list goes on for your successes, A Few Good Men. You didn't struggle to get people for that film. Jack Nicholson, Tom Cruise, Demi Moore, Kevin Bacon, the biggest people of that time. Can you give directing notes to someone like Jack Nicholson?
Yes, you can. And that's the thing. Really good actors are not uncomfortable with getting notes or even line readings, because they know that they have their craft and they're not worried about somebody telling them this. Tom many times would say, how do you want me to say that? Or Jack would say, do you want me to say it that way? And I would do it. And Jack was he's one of the great film actors of all time. They know I'm an actor. I'm not the best actor, but I acted. And so I'm not going to get them to do anything that they wouldn't want to do or that they couldn't pull off. And so they felt comfortable. They trusted that I could help them.
Rob Reiner, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It was
Enjoy
very
the
nice to
festival.
meet you.
Photo.
You say you feeling me. You say you mad at me. You type your life away. Hey, what a tragedy. But can you make it right when you go offline? Can you make it right when you go offline?